Hello, and welcome back to Headstrong. You are listening with me, Louis Strong, the host of this show. Now, Headstrong is a podcast where I sit down with a variety of individuals in the public eye to talk to them about their lives and their careers, but notably their vulnerabilities, because I want to learn what the word headstrong means to them. And to me, the word headstrong means to believe in yourself, to talk about your vulnerabilities, and reinforce your self-worth. Now, this series is entirely devoted to cricket, with the build-up to the summer now and the cricket season well underway. Entirely focusing on cricket got me thinking. I wanted to partner and support a charity that was rooted in the sport. And this, of course, made me think of the Ruth Strauss Foundation, founded by the incredible Sir Andrew Strauss, who very sadly lost his wife to a rare form of lung cancer. For more information on this, just carry on listening to the podcast and I'll tell you a bit later on. This series is also sponsored by the wonderful McGill and Partners and Ascot Group. Thank you for your support. On today's episode of Headstrong is the incredibly talented Dom Bess. Now, I sat down with Dom while he was also isolating out in India after the Sri Lanka series, where he saw some great success. We talked about his international career at the time, and we also talked about him starting out in the cricketing world and how challenging the cricketing world can be, and indeed his own battles with anxiety. I'd really like to extend my thanks to Dom for being so open, brave and courageous in telling me what he does divulge in this conversation. So without further ado, please do enjoy this conversation. Dom, thank you very much for joining me on Headstrong. This is a series devoted to cricket and I'm pleased to have you on board. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me, mate. Looking forward to it for sure.
So where am I finding you at this very second as we record this?
Yeah, I'm currently stuck in a room in Chennai. We just obviously come from Gaul in Sri Lanka and we'd flown over. Didn't realise how close it actually was. Obviously Chennai's south, so it was only a 2-hour flight into India. And yeah, we went through the back of the hotel, straight into our rooms and locked away for 6 days. So I'm currently 4 days in.
What's that atmosphere like then before going into isolation? Because you've come from being out and about in Sri Lanka. You did your isolation period in Sri Lanka, but then you've got to go into another 6 days, and it's 6 days of almost, no contact. I mean, of course, we've got technology and whatnot, but it's a strange thing to be going into. What's the atmosphere like?
It's quite weird because we went straight to Sri Lanka. We did a bit of quarantine there. I think we did 3-4 days there, like this, and then you're only allowed in the hotel or around the hotel. And fortunately, when we were in Sri Lanka, both hotels were all ours, so there was no real stress with that. And then obviously before you know it, we were straight into the games. It's always come quite quick. So then we were straight into the games, played the games, and when you're in there, obviously it's 5 days on a bounce, and obviously playing it, I certainly don't get much sleep during the nights, and so that comes along. And then, like I said, before you know it, you've done 2 tests, you're finished, and you're on another plane, knowing that you're going to do 6 more days. So for me, I'm almost, there's a bit of me at the start, I'm quite happy about because I can get my sleep back in. But then, sort of when you get into days 3 and 4, I just think the most important thing about it is having a bit of structure. Because as soon as you don't have structure, you get up real late, you don't do anything. Like me, I'll probably go straight on to Call of Duty and then you'll sit there for 3 hours, do nothing. Do you know what I mean? Before you know it, you're sort of through the day and you haven't done a lot. So I think structure for me is really important. But mate, to be honest, it is a strange atmosphere. Because like you said, you've got social media, everything like that. So you're in contact with everyone, and actually with Call of Duty, it's a bit of a social as well because you're chatting with lads from here, and then probably a little bit later on you'll go, lads probably back home will come on. So actually I quite enjoy it because I speak to a lot of my mates back home. It's a bit of a social, and obviously everyone's back in lockdown anyway. So yeah, mate, it is strange, but again, at the moment, it's the way of the world.
What is your structure then? What time are you getting up?
Probably getting up about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I always order breakfast in for sort of 9:30, and then I will watch a little bit. I'm actually on a bit of Man in the High Castle at the moment. the series Amazon Prime, which is top draw. So I'll watch that probably for a little bit, and then we'll have some sort of structure in terms of programs, like fitness programs. So we've actually got given a skipping rope. So that's probably the only thing we can do at the moment. Certainly for the first 3 days, we've actually the last 3 days of our 6-day quarantine, we've got a room next door where lads have got 45 minutes to an hour on either a treadmill or a watt bike. So we're in there, 45-minute slot. But before, I was just doing a bit of skipping. I do probably about half an hour skipping, some mobility, and our S&C that puts on like a yoga session, mobility session as a Zoom group. I haven't participated in any of that. I've sort of done myself, and then before you know it, it's a bit of lunch, and then it's sort of bedtime, and you just repeat for 6 days.
Love it. It's interesting about the so the coaches and the management team and stuff. Have they given you kind of a set structure themselves as well? Because of course you guys are professional athletes, and you've got to kind of, if you'd flown to India or Sri Lanka and you weren't in quarantine or isolation, you would be out training and stuff. So is there kind of apart from the skipping rope, is there anything that they're saying, right, you have to do this, or is it actually like, well, there's not a lot we can do?
Yeah, it's so we've I'll say that again. We've been really lucky. Before we went to Sri Lanka and India, some Red Bull lads had a really good sort of 2 months at Loughborough training. So through every week, so we actually got our loads up. So take bowling, obviously coming back from, if we start right back in October, end of the season, you'll probably have a month-long break. And then sort of you look ahead to these tours, and I know for myself, I'll probably have to bowl quite a lot. So I actually have to start getting my loads back in. So that's bowling a number of overs per week and gradually building it up to then when we got to about Christmas, I'd probably have bowled, I'd want to say about 50, 60 overs in a week. So take 3 days, take it 60 overs, probably 20 overs a day I built up so I could do that. Then you have a little cut-off period to make sure the body's sort of fully charged again. And then you're straight back into sort of bowling in Sri Lanka. And I guess you do that work then. So when you do, obviously we know what the situation is like nowadays with COVID and everything. That's our banker almost, if that makes sense. So when we do get into these sort of 6-day quarantines, it's just making sure that we're actually really mobile. That's a really big thing. We're actually sleeping really well as well to make sure that our recovery is good. So when we do go back into it, it's going to be quite full on. So it's making sure we go back into that straight away. And just really making sure that we're making sure that our bodies are fully ready for the next, say, 4 weeks, because as soon as we come out of this quarantine, so the game actually starts on Friday.
Yeah.
So you're looking Saturday. We've had 6 days off where I haven't bowled a ball. And we'll have probably two training days, and then we're straight into a test match. And again, you don't want to go too hard in the training days because it's such a the 5 days, it takes it out of you physically and mentally. So I think you've got to really make sure that you find the right balance actually in your bedroom, in your own space, making sure you probably get a little bit of work done so you keep ticking over, but not so much where you're completely done, because then it's gonna impact you more on days 3, 4, 5 of the test match.
I'm curious.
And that's something that I've had to learn like straight away, because I'm someone as well who wants to get their prep done. I'm someone who will bowl a lot, and it's more to get my rhythm and everything like that going. Get that sort of feel. I'm a feel man, so it's been a really tough one for me at times. That I've got about 4 or 5 balls next to my bed, and I just sort of get the feel in my hand again to make sure, because I get quite anxious that I'm not gonna sort of know how to hold it, which is, it's all mentally then. It's all mentality.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you said it there as well. Like you've got your balls, a couple of balls in the room just to keep hold of it. And I'm sure some of the boys up the order have got their bats in the room. I'm curious to ask you, who do you think in the England dressing room then is in their room, kind of practicing their action or practicing their
No.
their shape? Who do you think?
I'll go through the batters straight away. I know Burns will have one. I know Sibley will have one. I know Crawley will definitely have probably about two. Mate, Rooty will have one. Honestly, all the batters as well, they're quite superstitious. I get that
Really?
feel. Yeah, so I reckon, mate, it would probably be the other hand. Who doesn't? Who probably doesn't
Go on then. Who doesn't?
have a bat? Not a lot, I don't reckon. I know for a fact. Obviously, I've seen Stokes' Instagrams. He's got one. Probably Butler. I don't reckon Butler would probably have a bat in his room.
I can almost see Joss kind of sitting there, kind of doing some sort of, I don't know, Zen masterclass for 2 hours or something, just really focusing.
Well, I was going to say he's really big into his Pilates. I know that.
Yeah.
His wife obviously has a company, so I know at times his Instagram pops up with him doing like live sessions with that. So I know he's really into that. And other than that, he's massively into his Call of Duty as well. So if he's not doing that, he's actually on COD.
Great. I mean, let's go back to that bubble then, because we're talking about the bubble out there in the subcontinent, but of course you spent a lot of time this summer and in 2020 over here in the UK. What was it? What's it like comparing the two experiences? Because they are, of course, very, very different. What are the kind of the main differences that you've noticed and experienced? From
the different bubbles in terms of,
well, not necessarily the people, but just the experiences, because I mean, of course it's completely a different environment out there in Sri Lanka and India. In the UK, I anticipate it's the home comforts of the ECB and knowing that they've got your best interests.
That's definitely it. And I think, and actually, do you know what, I was really sort of encouraged with how well Sri Lanka and India have done it here. Because again, that was almost, I was thinking it was quite cautious. You never know when you're going to, I think certainly when I went into the English bubble, we had a lot of information thrown at us and given to us, and a lot of, I guess, comfort knowing that actually if you were really struggling, you can go home. They will let you out to go home, break that bubble to go home, and obviously it would only be a couple of hours away. Whereas I guess the main difference is obviously you're away. I'm 13 hours away from home on a flight, and it's probably a little bit harder just saying, oh, I'm done, getting on a flight and going home. So I think that's where then I think this is where ECB have stepped up so well. They've really made sure that every player knows that the number one, I guess, most important message, the number one message to us is our mental health and our well-being here. And I think that's really important, because actually it also puts some players' minds to rest as well at times. And certainly if you're not playing, I think if you're playing, it's a little bit easier because you've got a distraction. You know you're playing. Whereas some of the lads who probably aren't playing and are reserves, you can't really, again, we talk about structures, you can't really see the end, if that makes sense. Like, you're not playing, you'll be training, you'll be bowling, you'll be doing 12th man, and it does get very repetitive. I think the really big and important thing as well is, and something that I've made sure I keep reminding myself is, it's obviously tough, but I think there's a lot tougher situations out there at the moment in the world. And I think actually us getting out here and again, making sure that we're playing good competitive cricket on TV, I think is really important. And I think it's really important for people back home where actually, I'm fortunate. I know after 6 days, I've got the sun here. I know I've got the heat, and we know how important that is to your mental health. We know how actually moods change when you're probably sat at home when it's cold, wet. You're not allowed out. Do you know what I mean? It's winter time in England. I think it's really important to make sure that we get out there and actually we perform and we entertain people at home, to make sure, again, they've got something to look forward to. I think that is really key. And I think that's something that has certainly been stressed as well over here, that we're here to also entertain people, make sure that people at home are enjoying themselves watching the cricket, if that's something that we can do.
Yeah, it's great that there's an awareness of the bigger picture, I suppose. And actually, yeah, I mean, ultimately as well, you are there, and it is just a game of cricket. I mean, of course, it is your livelihood and the team's livelihood and everything. But yeah, there are bigger, more important issues. But what you are doing is delivering, such positivity to people back here, watching it and actually getting fully invested. Because I know when the first lockdown happened and there was no live sport at all, and I bet you were the same. God, it was a disaster. I mean, things you miss.
How long were the days, mate? Oh God,
yeah.
like it was just strange, wasn't it? Not having any sport on TV. Like growing up, sports being my life, and to have that period where nothing was on and you were watching. I've watched. I remember watching the Rugby World Cup 2003 about 4 times. I was like, because it was on, and I was like, just, you know what I mean? Just seeing Wilco bang a drop goal over, I was like, it doesn't get better than that. And I guess that's why it's so important. And I did actually see something on Twitter, not Twitter, sorry, Instagram today. I'm actually off Twitter at the moment. Being off and on, not really on it when I'm playing cricket. But I saw something about Channel 4 potentially coming and getting involved in the England-India series, obviously being free to air, which I think would be so important. Because even if it's people don't really watch cricket or anything, like at least something's on, and actually they might get into it. And I think it's so important. I really do hope something like Channel 4 take hold of it, because you look at the Ashes 2005 when it was free to air, and actually how many people watched it and got involved.
Yeah, it's a real opportunity to just get invested in something from back here anyway, because there's not a great deal going on.
No, I bet. Yeah,
but it's but as you said, it's all great. I want to talk to you about the management and the players because people see management and players very separate when you say it like that. What is the kind of structure when you're out on tour and also in the bubbles? Do you guys mingle together, or is it very much an us and them environment?
No, not at all. And I think that shows how good this group of players management, this group, the whole ECB, I think it's so important that it doesn't matter who you are, coach, player, backroom staff, it doesn't matter who you are, everyone mingles with everyone. We've got some great backroom staff, great management that I think everyone's comfortable with everyone. I think naturally, probably the players will at times will go for dinner and stuff, but you'll see other people, and it's not like, the management will sit over there and the team will sit over there. It's everyone sort of gets involved with everyone, and I think that's really important. And I actually think that's why we've been so successful recently. It's no, obviously you've got the hierarchy in terms of the head coach and things like that, but it's almost like that's on paper, and actually away from that, it's very. Do you know what I mean? I can go to Chris Silverwood Spoons and speak to him. I just think actually our well-being. So our team masseuse well-being head of well-being is Mark Saxby, who's been part of the backroom stuff for God knows how long, 25 years. He was there, I think it was 2003, I want to say. It was age, mate, he's ancient he is. And he is honestly one of the greatest men. He's just come out to India. He didn't do Sri Lanka, he's come out to India, and honestly, I bet half the lads can't wait to see him because he's so good for us. And again, he's backroom staff, and a lot of the lads will play chess with him. A lot of lads will, do you know what I mean? When it wasn't COVID, last year we went to have coffee and lunch with him, things like that. It's so open, and I think that's where, like I said, it's so important that you break down those relationships.
Yeah, it sounds like
stereotypes. For those relationships.
I mean, it sounds like a great atmosphere, and it's kind of proof is in the pudding. Coming off the tour in Sri Lanka. 2-0 win. What an absolute result! And we're heading into a 4-test series in India. I say we. Obviously, I'm not involved at all.
Yeah. No, the whole
as much
team,
as I'd like to be.
The whole team.
Yeah,
all the fans. Yeah,
but I'm interested to hear your opinion on the subcontinent because. Of course, being specialist spinner coming into the subcontinent, that you are very much going to be out there and going to be consistently playing or relied upon. Do you feel pressure on your shoulders when you are embarking on a tour like this, even though you have been prepping and putting in the hours, as you say, putting in 50, 60 over weeks? But do you feel that pressure coming in or not?
Yeah, mate, I see it, and this is where my mindset. I really work on my mindset, and I've done it for a long time before. I don't see it as pressure. I think pressure, again, I know it's quite cliche, but pressure is obviously put on yourself. And I know I'm going to play probably a bigger role than other people because of the conditions, but I see it as such good opportunity. So it's actually my time to show what I can do with the ball, show what I can do with the bat against spin. And I see it as I've got to flip it in that aspect and see it as a massive positive, because I think there's a lot of other people, external people in social media that will put that pressure on you anyway. They're going to expect things from you, and actually I'm going to expect my own standards. And having that extra baggage, and time after time after time, when people keep saying it, it doesn't matter how strong you are and how resilient you are, that baggage will slowly appear on you, and those, depending on, if you see, like I said, if you see pressure as a positive or negative, it can go either two ways. So I see it as like a great opportunity. And obviously playing at Somerset beforehand with Leachy, the other spinner who actually, where we started, we played on spinning wickets, and there was always perceived pressure, a lot of opportunities to actually go out there and win games for Somerset. And we did that really well at the start of our career, or certainly my start of my career. So when we came to England, the first thing I said to him, and first thing we actually said to each other, was like, mate, this is literally going to be like Taunton. Like, it's going to be like bowling, like we did, but it's going to be for our country. How cool is that going to be? And what an opportunity to potentially lead the bowling attack with, say, the likes of Stuart Broad, James Anderson.
Jimmy,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys, mate. And I do, again, I still have to pinch myself that I'm playing with people like Jimmy and Broady, because I grew up watching these guys.
Definitely. I mean, it's very, very, very interesting to hear it talk about it like that, and with your mentality. But of course, congratulations as well on taking the fifer out in Sri Lanka. That's another one under the bag, and many more to come, because you're only 23. Absolute result. But I did want to talk to you about some of the pundits. Of course, it is their job to be, critique you and the team, because they want to encourage both sides of the argument and the conversation for the viewer. That is their job. But again, it boils down to your mentality. How do you cope with that criticism coming from the people who were formerly in your position, I suppose? You know, they used to play for England, a lot of these boys. And I'm sure that they tackled criticism as well. So how do you tackle it yourself?
Yeah, do you know what? It does make me laugh, because it's like a revolving door. They would have been around it. And actually, I think now with social media these days, and there's some great things, some amazing things about social media. There's also some terrible things about social media that everyone from Sachin Tendulkar, Nasser Sain, I'm trying to think, Rob Key, all the guys, Graham Swan, someone that I've looked up a lot, but all these guys who've got social media can obviously get in contact with you. But then you could also have all the other people that play fourth team cricket, bat at 9, don't bowl. Do you know what I mean? These guys, they can also chip in with you and tweet you and message you. And I think, for me personally, when it goes really well, obviously everyone's on your side. When it doesn't go so well, people are so quick to fire away at people with having no accountability. So I've seen, obviously, there's been a lot of things about Twitter actually having responsibility in terms of actually having an address and having someone's, do you know what I mean? Actually having accountability to a profile, instead of people just firing away, saying what they want. Obviously, you've seen a lot of racist things at the moment in terms of the football, which is horrific. But for me, sorry, going back to the question, I don't, when I'm playing cricket, I don't look at Twitter.
Great.
Because actually, at the end of the day, the big thing for me was nothing matters outside of our circle of the team, the squad. Nothing matters. Like I honestly could not care less about what someone says about my bowling. So take the fifer. Obviously, it wasn't the best fifer. I know that. Again, it makes me laugh, because people think that they expect us to be right on the money. And at times we obviously expect that to be right on the money, but you've got to be realistic at times. We were straight out of quarantine with not a lot of prep, and you're straight into a game, and it's completely different. And again, for me as a spinner, being fairly young, I'm taking full responsibility of it. But again, I've got to be realistic. Okay, it wasn't my best, but at the end of the day, the outcome was I took 5 for 30 and I got ourselves off the field, and that's part of the game. People, batters have drop catches and they go on and get hundreds, and again, that's part of the game. And I think it's really important to realise that, but also not listen to people just bag you constantly. And again, Twitter is basically giving your number out to someone that doesn't know you and they can get in contact with you. So for me, I actually deal with it. I deal with it in that I don't have Twitter on. I have my Instagram on because actually I like to see photos. I like to see what my mates are up to. I know a lot of my mates use Instagram, so I like to see that side of it. And again, with Instagram, I've done it so I don't actually see any comments. Not that I wouldn't go looking for it, because I think if you go looking for it, you fall into a very vicious and dangerous cycle. I'm a big overthinker anyway when I play cricket. So again, that wouldn't help me. And I know that. So actually, I know it's just dangerous for me. And again, it's about, again, sticking to my mentality of actually, all that matters is within my own bubble, and that is the England cricket bubble. And if that's myself doing the job for England when I'm bowling or batting, then that's all that should matter. There should be nothing else that matters.
Yeah, it sounds like you've definitely got your own technique sorted, especially when you're on tour or in a series, as in, because as you say as well, Twitter and Instagram are two very different social media platforms. Twitter just heavily, heavy in what you can say to people. But yeah, imagery is on Instagram. And actually, I always like seeing at the end of a test match and after the win, literally everyone in the dressing room is posting the best bits of the match. And it's like, that's what you want to see. Really, it's positive. And it's actually, a positive message.
You see some stuff inside the change rooms as well, which you probably wouldn't see, obviously, watching it as well. So I think, and that's the world we've grown up in now, I guess. We're both probably grown up with social media within our lives. And that's something that obviously we will have to, certainly myself, I have to deal with it, because otherwise it's not like it was. I tell you what, Zach Crawley doesn't have Twitter, Instagram. He doesn't have a clue what's going on. And no, honestly, and this is what I love about Creeps. That's his nickname. But I think, mate, he's so not bothered, and he's actually so different in terms of not having it. People have asked him, where's your Instagram? Where's your Twitter? Being like, that's normal. And Creeps is like, I'm not bothered. He has Facebook, obviously, with all his friends and stuff on it. But other than that, mate, he doesn't see anything. And he goes into I really admire the way he goes about it. Because say he obviously, he'd done quite well. And then he went and got his double 100 at Old Trafford. And obviously I went on Instagram and it was full of it. Twitter was full of it. He was everywhere. Mate, and the amazing thing for me was Creeps didn't have a clue what was going on. He didn't know, everyone was tweeting about him. And actually as well, I think that also keeps you down to earth so much, because you can see it. You can see all these followers you're getting. And I think people certainly at times, they almost feel like they're better than other people because they've got 500,000 followers. Do you know what I mean? And it's a different world. It makes me laugh because honestly, Zach's such a laid back bloke, and that's the amazing thing. He's not bothered about it, and I really do applaud him. I think what do we do to ourselves? Certainly, sportsmen, people. What do we do ourselves? We're literally giving people our phone numbers to other people just so they can hammer us, basically.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, actually, to be fair, from him. And that's impressive that he doesn't feel even any temptation, actually, about that. It's very, very strong-willed.
But it's quite,
I suppose if you don't know any different...
Yeah, but it's quite a different idea, isn't it? Because we've always grown up having Instagram or Twitter. So, he's almost that real niche that he's never had it. And think about growing up, going to school and stuff like that. You would have always had Instagram, I've always had Instagram, always had Twitter with my mates and stuff. But he's never had any interest of it. And again, like I say, he's almost the odd one out, but I really applaud it.
It's interesting because, like, when you come in from off the pitch and stuff, I know you're probably don't have your phones in the dressing room or whatever, but then as soon as you get back somewhere, everyone's like, "Oh, let's see what's going on. Check the phone and whatever."
Yeah.
I imagine that he doesn't have that. That's just one less stress almost, which is quite nice.
He'll probably be reading the news.
I love it.
He'll probably be replying to people that have messaged him. But other than that, mate, I know for a fact he'll be reading probably BBC News because that's what he does, and that's it. Or he'll be playing chess or something like that. He's
brilliant.
He's actually, I just think it's amazing. So, and it was for me, obviously meeting him now, being very good mates with him. It's such a great outlook of someone else. And actually, like I said, I'm off Twitter now, or certainly when I'm with cricket, I'm off Twitter because I don't need to see anything. And I only use Twitter after that is actually to watch or to follow a lot of the rugby, because obviously I'm a big rugby fan. So I use that more as the Twitter side.
Yeah, you said it yourself there, that Zach's now a great mate of yours. How important is it as well, just that, you're of course your teammates, you're going to grow together and bond together, but how important is it to have your mates in the team? Yeah,
massive. And I think you go through a lot, certainly in international cricket and international sport where it's so cutthroat at times. Actually having lads and having a group like we do at the moment is amazing. Like, you think we've got probably 5 or 6 youngsters in the side or around the squad, myself, Popey, Sammy Curran, Sibbers, Crawley, obviously Josh superstar now, he's only 25. Like, we're still fairly young guys. And then obviously within the reserves, you got a lot my age, Mason Crane, Amal Verdi, Matt Parkinson. There's a lot of us who are young, and I think making sure that we're going through that journey together. If you're going really well or going not having the greatest game, making sure that we're there together. And do you know what I mean? Just having, almost when it's going worse, having a stronger connection. And we've certainly, all of us have been through that together, even if it's been a game or so. I think it's so important, and more for the team then. Like, you get around the side more. And then you've got the likes of Joe Root, Joss, Jimmy, Broady, Stokesy, all like Chris Wokes, all these guys as well, who are so experienced that have also done it. Like, they're also, do you know what I mean? They also grew up with each other. So we actually see that. We're like, 4 or 5 years.
That'll be us in 5 years.
That's those guys. Do you know what I mean? Well, hopefully, if we keep going and saying that it's not 2 separate seasons, then everyone sort of mixes for everyone. Like, I know there'll be times that you'll have, like, Ruti will come over and obviously speak to me, and do you know what I mean? We've got a great relationship with him, Butler, Rory Burns. I can't express everyone how I guess open everyone is to everyone. Like myself, going to Jimmy or Broady for a bit of advice, which I have done, and actually feel open to go to someone that we've watched growing up and idolizing. I guess seeing them do so well is a really special thing that they have been able to do, is actually open up and let us in. Definitely.
I mean, I like that you talk to Ruti there, and it's great to have the support of the skipper, because he probably, the man's got a lot on his plate, let's be honest. But do you ever does he ever say, move over, Dom, I'm going to come on for a few overs?
Yeah, a couple of times. I think at the end of that task test, he was saying to Leach, come on, any danger, lads? And then obviously he came on, and within an over, mate, he got both poles. He was like, how hard's that? I was like, that's fair.
Classic.
He's great as well. Like, he's, again, and it makes me laugh because I've grown up watching these guys, and actually being within a side and being a teammate now of them, it's really amazing. And again, it's credit to the ECB, it's credit to the guys within the squad, how open they can be to allow us to come in and actually feel comfortable to perform.
This series is brought to you by 2 magnificent sponsors, Ascot Group and McGill and Partners. Ascot Group is a global specialty insurance and reinsurance group with a record of underwriting excellence and superior claims service. Founded in 2001, the company provides a broad range of property and casualty solutions to customers worldwide through its platforms in London, Bermuda, and the United States. Ascot is a long-standing supporter of charities with a link to sport, including ongoing sponsorship of the Great Britain Wheelchair Rugby Club. With a recent increase in mental health awareness, the company is particularly proud to support Headstrong Season 5 and Innings with, which focuses on the psychological well-being challenges that arise from professional sport. McGill & Partners is a boutique insurance broker helping corporate clients find specialist solutions for their most challenging and complex risks. Growing rapidly since its launch in 2019, the company operates in the UK, Europe and the United States and prides itself on working with some of the biggest companies in the world. And you can find out more on their website, mcgillpartners.com. McGill & Partners understands high performance and the mental health challenges that can be associated with it, regardless of the industry people are working in. The company is fully committed to their employees' well-being and are delighted to be sponsoring the Headstrong podcast series. It is also delighted to support the Ruth Strauss Foundation. Thank you to these two wonderful sponsors.
Right, we're going into the Indies series now. You're in your quarantine. You've got a few days left. By the time this episode comes out, it will have finished. The test series will have finished. We'll be going into the ODIs, I reckon. Any predictions, personal or team?
Well, I'll go team first because I think, again, buying into a team, mate, if we win out here, I think it will be an unbelievable achievement. I saw a stat the other day that there'd been one win in God knows how long. I think that was 2012 when England actually won over here. Mate, if we win this series, I think it will firstly define the group and actually how special this group is, that we can go away against India, who at the moment are an absolute powerhouse. Like just going away to Australia as well was hard enough. To beat them in their own conditions, I think makes you realise how important and how big this series is. I think you're coming up against the number one side of the world. We always talk about going to Australia and beating obviously the Aussies in the Ashes, which is the biggest thing I think for an Englishman. But also for being an English spinner, to go away to somewhere like India where it spins and obviously having that expectation and knowing that it's going to be tough. These guys are the best in the world against spin. I think it would, that and the Ashes, I think would be the biggest achievement an English Test cricketer could make. And the fact that I've got an opportunity to potentially influence it in hopefully quite a big way is, again, you see it two ways. I think it's one hell of an opportunity and something that hopefully when this comes out in the future, the way I want it to go, I look back with immense pride and all that work and dedication to get to this point right now. I think it would be a great achievement. And I'm hoping, obviously, I don't care how it comes, mate. If it's 1-0, if it's 2-0, if it's 3-2, whatever it is, if it takes 3 draws, mate, if it's 4-0, I honestly...
Say it now, come on, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Months,
if it's 4-0, what are you doing?
Oh, God, mate. I honestly don't know, because I think it's such a big thing to do.
Of course.
Like I said, I do not... If it's 4-0, mate, that is icing on the cake. If it's 1-0 and it's been 3 draws and then we've pipped it at the end, I think it's one hell of an achievement. And again...
Definitely.
For me individually, it's whatever it, and I know this is quite cliche and whatever, it's quite broad, but whatever it takes for me to contribute to that, if that is me actually not playing or me getting dropped, say, and just doing 12th man or running the drinks, as long as I do that to allow someone else to, as a team, make us succeed, I think so important. And I think you're in a great side when people are doing that for the team. It can be very easy to say it, but I think the way that people have been within this squad that haven't played have gone and done their business sort of behind the cameras, away from everything. I think that shows a great side. So for me individually, whatever it takes really, mate, if it is I'm out in the field and I'm taking 5 wickets, amazing. If it's me tying up one end so Leachy can take all the wickets, if it's me not even playing and running drinks out to Jimmy, Broady, Joff, all the guys, I don't care, as long as we come home as a successful squad.
I think it's a real opportunity, and it would be an absolute immense success if you guys can pull it off. So fingers crossed. But I just want to take this opportunity now to rewind a little, and we kind of go back to pre-England days, looking at some of your Somerset time and maybe some time at school. Because I mean, even from what we've been talking about here, you're very much in touch with your mentality and indeed your mental health, and that, I'm delighted to kind of hear that. But back in 2019, when you were at Somerset, I mean, you won't mind me saying as well, you weren't necessarily in the best place yourself, but it often starts a little bit before your playing days, didn't it? And actually, when you were growing up, can you just describe a little bit when you started to acknowledge what you were experiencing?
Yeah, so you talk about 2019. So I was playing for Somerset, and I had a breakdown in terms of playing for a game, and I will come back to it. But that was just that was something that built up for that season long. But going back to actually when it first initially happened, and I remember it clear as day. I was at school. Obviously, you know how important exams are when you're 17, 18, obviously lower sixth, upper sixth with AS and A levels. And I struggled AS, and I had to retake pretty much all of them, I think, for A level. So I was basically doing 2 years in one, alongside I was obviously trying to make it pro at Somerset, and also just trying to enjoy life in terms of just about to turn 18, 17, 18. Do you know what I mean? You're going out, going to parties, start going clubbing as well. I think there was so much on the plate, and I got to the point where I really started struggling, and there was one point, and it was in geography, mate. I was upper sixth, pretty early on in the year, so it would probably be in January, where you sort of know you've had your mocks, you know you're coming to crunch time in a couple of months with A levels. I know I've got everything, and I'm dyslexic, and they're sort of the tutors, my tutor and sort of teachers around. Well, my tutor made sure that I didn't read in front of anyone. It was one of my biggest fears, and still probably is one of my biggest fears. If it's not my subject, I really struggle. And anyway, it was a Tuesday morning, second period, and we started reading. Our geography teacher obviously had forgotten, missed it, whatever. It's like, lads or guys, we're going to start reading. I want us to start off. And like, obviously, as soon as he said, right, I want someone to start reading, I'm like head down, trying to avoid the situation, sweating, mate, sweating. And I'm getting really anxious, and really my anxiety was sort of through the roof. Anyway, I started reading and started sort of stuttering, missing words, like honestly made no sense whatsoever. And I could sort of hear people laughing, as you do, and like obviously mates sort of like stuttering and things like that. And I got worse and worse. And I sort of looked at my teacher and like looking at him, like almost trying to make sure like he knows what's going on. He's like, I should not be thrown in this deep end. Sort of like trying to catch eye contact, and he was like, I want you to keep going, like almost keep going through it. And I was like, I can't, mate. And I honestly broke down there. And I want to say one of my friends sort of like took over, just sort of got the hint, took over, started reading. Anyway, I sort of like broke down, started crying in front of 13, 14. And you're supposed to be, I guess, sort of the cool kid, like playing sport, all of this. Do you know what I mean? I broke down, and after that, I went back to my tutor. I was obviously in tears, and mate, I had a real fear of going back into the classroom, and like my anxiety. Every time I went to school, my anxiety went through the roof, and through this anxiety, I'd get really low, and I guess for the next week, I didn't go into school. I was really struggling. I'd go to the sport and not go into the school, and my tutor was amazing with me. Obviously, I had all this pressure, and my head was my head was scrambled. And you talk about structure. I had no structure. My head was scrambled, everything. And I ended up falling further and further down this hole because I didn't really talk to anyone as well. So I had this problem, and everyone sort of saw it, but I was just like, yeah, it's fine, I'm fine. And people, obviously, my classes realised that I wasn't coming in barely ever. And I was actually, I lived with my best mate, Jack Maunder, who actually plays for Exeter Chiefs. I lived with him for 5-6 years, him and Isaac Heidelman, my other best mate. And they're two really intelligent lads. And I actually stayed at home with Jack's mum and worked all day. And I just worked by myself because I had the fit. I couldn't go into school. And then as I sort of got into it, I got a little bit more confident, went back in, but I'd have good days, bad days. And this is where it stems from in terms of the depression, like my depression and the side of it. I got so low and so worried and anxious about things that I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. Like, why can't I do this? Do you know what I mean? Going into the negative mindset. This is why I'm so strong on it now. I make sure that I remind myself every day that I was so like dark and I got to a point, and I hope I never go down to the point. It was March time now, so real crunch time in terms of exams and things like that. And I remember being at home and at my best mate's house, and I remember getting a knife and sort of, do you know what I mean? I remember getting a knife, obviously having really, really bad thoughts. And again, when I had that moment, I was the lowest you can low. I've sort of gone through it. It's been 3 months where I hadn't spoken about it to anyone, and I was so low. And I remember like having the knife. Also, I was by myself and sort of putting it to my arm and thinking, like, is this how you sort of get out of that? Is this how you release it almost? Like, is this how you release sort of the pressure, the depression, the bad days that continuously roll? You can have a bad day once and twice, but I found that, and the best way I describe it, I'd have these days all the time, and I'd go down the spiral stairs. I'd end up that I couldn't go back up the spiral stairs. I'd be so dark, I couldn't see anything. Like I said, I got this knife, and thank God I didn't do anything because I freaked myself out. I remember dropping the knife and just being in shock. Like, how have I got to myself to this? And I remember sat on next to the island, like bawling my eyes out, and their dog called Janie. Obviously, dogs are the best things since sliced bread. And she came over, licked me, everything. I just remember sat there crying and thinking, I need help. And I remember opening up and to my tutor, and then the hardest part was opening up to mum and dad and things like that. And I think obviously word of mouth got around to more my support network. That actually I was really struggling, really, really struggling. And you know what? As soon as I opened up, and obviously it obviously happened that I had this weight, I had this bag off my shoulder. I actually started climbing up the spiral stairs and actually seeing a bit of light. And I know you might ask, like, oh my God, it's only come from like speaking, but that was my trigger. That I was so afraid of something, and I felt so stupid, so like, do you know what I mean? So bad about myself and I didn't say anything because as a young lad at 17, 18, you think you're strong, you think you've got it all. Do you know what I mean? You're so naive and you're scared to tell your mates because they'll laugh. Because I guess they don't understand. And that's where I was, mate. And I guess as soon as the exams went, as soon as the summer went, I just felt so much relief off my shoulders. And do you know what I mean? And then do you know what I mean? I forgot about that in terms of I was 18, I was going out, enjoying everything with my mates, playing sport. And then, like I said, fast forward it, that summer 2019, I obviously wasn't really playing. I'd just been dropped from England. Again, I started having these bad days that continuously rolled, and I got into a point where I didn't start speaking to people. I didn't start offloading things that you need to, and making sure that you're okay every step. And I was away from home for a long time. I was obviously away in the winters playing for England, and then I would go on loan to Yorkshire, back and forth, not at home, not really seeing any of my mates away from cricket, sorry. And I remember getting to this game. It was against Yorkshire at Somerset. It was end of September. I remember probably having about 2 months where I was just really down and didn't say anything to anyone. Again, that build up, falling down the spiral. And it wasn't my anxiety, because I felt like I could deal with that. It was more the depression. It was just the bad days, the waking up and like, oh, really, like, what am I going to do today? And I remember, luckily, our psychologist was there, Chris Bodman at the time, and I took him in. We were batting first. We won the toss and batted, and I took us into the changing rooms. In behind, there's sort of where the second team coaches and academy directors, desks are, and their office. And I remember speaking to him. He's like, "Oh, you don't see yourself." And mate, I just burst into tears. I burst into tears for about 30, 40 minutes. I completely lost myself, and I was telling how I feel and how I was getting these feelings back, and I was really struggling. And I had a heart-to-heart for probably about half an hour, 45 minutes, and I completely forgot the cricket was going on, mate. And I think we were 4 down, and I was bawling my eyes out. And I remember one of the lads texting me saying, "Mate, where are you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, like, fucking," do you know what I mean? I just like completely, my mind I'd forgotten about any sort of sport. It was all about my well-being, my mental health. And I sat there and I was like, I've got to go pad up. And I remember sat there in the change room. I'd just been crying my eyes out, obviously really red, puffy eyes. And I was sort of like trying to strap my pads on, like trying to get into the game. Anyway, went in, probably faced about 40 balls. I remember chipping one to extra cover, walking off, and I was walking off into the change room, and I was unstrapping my pads, and all this emotion, that I guess a little bit of relief that I'm really struggling. I started crying, and George Bartlett and Tom Banton were in the change rooms. They were opposite me, and I was like sort of head down, bawling my eyes out, and they were like, "Oh my, like, surely you're not crying because you just got out." I was like, "Mate, like, honestly, could not care about getting out." I was like, I said to them, I said, "Mate, I'm really struggling, like really, really struggling." Like I didn't know how to explain it to them. It's like, "Mate, I'm struggling." Anyway, from that moment, I went straight up to the head coaches, Jason Kerr, and I've got a great relationship with him. And I said, "Mate, I'm really struggling. I've been really struggling for 2-3 months." And to go back, they knew what my struggles were, because obviously I was in the academy and I had a lot of pressure. And when I had that incident, I actually opened up to those guys and said my problems, and the support that I got from those guys was phenomenal. Fast forward there, I said, "JK, I'm really, really struggling." He said, "Mate, forget about the cricket." He said, "I don't care about what you do. You can honestly go away now. We can just say you're struggling. I don't want you in around it." And for me as well, I think the cricket actually kept me away. Do you know what I mean? Kept me focused with something. But it got to the point where it was coming into my cricket, and I knew then it was different. Anyway, the next morning, I went to see James Kennedy, our doctor, just to have a catch up with him. So I missed the warm up. And in the warm up, Jason said to the whole group, "Lads, Bessie's really struggling at the moment. He's obviously, you'll know that he's not here at the moment. He's going to come in a bit later. He's just speaking to Kenners," and sort of explain the situation, and obviously explain it to Bart and Bance, who had obviously seen me bawling my eyes out. And mate, I was so anxious to go back into that change room, because I had just, I didn't tell them, and it was coming from somewhere else. But I remember walking to the change room, and everyone got their arm around me, like gave me hugs, like talk about being manly and not need. Do you know what I mean? No emotion, all this. Oh my God, the amount of bullshit that is, mate. People, everyone, like James Hildreth came up to me and gave me a hug, and I thought that was such a big thing for me. I was like, Hildy's absolute club legend, and again, he was like, "I don't want to ever see you like that." And obviously, then we go to Trez. Obviously, Trez has opened up about all his mental health, and I speak to him a lot. Have spoken to him a lot, and mate, the way he has helped me, I guess the way I've spoken to him, he's spoken to me, opened up. It is so normal. And again, I know it's been quite a long bit of this, but I think it's so important to tell the story. And actually now, when we talk about my mentality, when we talk about the positivity, there's a reason behind that. And the reason is because I know where I can get myself into. And I know and I always know come October, there'll be days where I'll really struggle because there's no cricket, there's no structure. And I'm sat there thinking, well, what do I do with myself now? Like, what do I do? And the two things I do is I'll either train really, really hard, which is probably not great because it's supposed to be our rest period, but I've got to do something, or I'll go on loads of holidays. Or I have done previously, go on holidays with all my mates, and then I'll go on holiday with my girlfriend. And that'll probably be like a 3-week period where I know I'm doing something, and I guess that's how I'm dealing with it. And I tell you now, I'm really anxious for actually what's after cricket, because again, there's that unknown. But again, I flip it in terms of, well, I could do whatever I want. I could literally be. Do you know what I mean? There's such a great opportunity to do whatever I want. So,
well, also don't wish the future. Don't wish it away.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's so much to absorb in what you've just said there. I mean, it's I think something that, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, but it's something to take away is that, you know, that you're clearly very passionate about the fact that, you know, there has been, or, you know, once was a stigma about, you know, people being able to talk about this, but I feel like you're very in touch and very confident and comfortable to say, actually, do you know what? I hold my hands up, and do you know what? Some things do get overwhelming, and it's just normal. And it's actually 100%. Abnormal to say that you're not overwhelmed and stressed and anxious when things do get too much on your plate. And actually, I always use the image of, like, you know, humans can burst, and, like, you know, I'm a crier, to be honest, as well sometimes, and that is my release. Yeah. And actually, you feel a whole lot better about it. You feel worse trying to hold it in and not show it. How
good you feel, mate.
Literally.
I know.
It's good for you.
I completely agree. Oh, mate. And that's the amazing thing. I think, and I take my hat off, actually, social media at times it is the cause of a lot of things. But then I think having a platform where you can open up, and I know there's been a lot of people, and I obviously I've got not the biggest, in terms of not the biggest following where you see some of these other players with millions, but I think I've got a following where I think I can really help people, and that's something that I want to do. And again, I look at Marcus, look at Trez, and I think how many people he's helped. And it's not about how many people. If it's one person, that's the thing. As long as you help people and you actually, you normalize it, because everyone goes through it. Everyone gets overwhelmed. Everyone gets stressed. Everyone at times doesn't want to speak about it. But it's making sure that in the end you do speak about it and you have that close contact, because, like you say, if you share a problem, the problem's halved.
Definitely. I mean, it is. It's becoming increasingly more important in professional sport now, and just that image of the dressing room there, I can only imagine the anxiety that you were experiencing going in. But that's exactly what anxiety is, I suppose. You think of the worst possible scenarios, and you're going to go in there and you think, oh, everyone's going to be looking at you, staring at you. When actually the reality of it, when you did go in there, was helping hands all round and just a support bubble and network that was just going to keep you afloat. And that's almost overwhelming, just the very thought of that.
Yeah, mate, and then obviously then opening up a little bit more about it. I did an interview, and I remember talking and they started talking about this mindset. And do you know what? I just went, fuck it. I'm gonna just tell them about the situation. And I told them, and then obviously then it's sort of progressed into something a little bit more where actually people do know I've struggled. And again, that's a great thing. I've had a message from loads different people before saying, thank you so much for chatting, like open up. And I guess at times people can see sportsmen, international cricketers, international rugby players as people that are can't be broken, or that are on a different world or a different planet, where actually they're just normal people that probably have got an exceptional skill, but also they're very driven, and they've probably gone through a lot of stuff to make them resilient. and you'll find a lot of people, and I'm talking sports, like they're actors, musicians, everyone will have that. If they want to get to the top, they'll have to be resilient. And everyone in the world will have these thoughts, these ideas. And again, people are different. People react differently, and people don't deal with it as well as they could.
Yeah, I mean, you've literally just summarized and explained what this podcast is all about, basically. I mean, the very reason I started it was because I wanted to bring people on in the public eye to allow people who don't feel confident in speaking out and hearing, these big people in the spotlight who have followers and pressure on them and are experiencing very normal, down-to-earth human being issues, such as mental health and anxiety like that. And, the people that have come on, I spoke to Simon Pegg yesterday about his alcoholism and depression. I spoke to Cipriani last year about his experience with the media and how much of a nightmare that is. And it's just like, it's very important. And actually hearing that people have got in touch with you to say, thanks so much. And that makes everything almost worthwhile. In a way, it's just 100%. So important, and yeah, I mean, long may it continue. So yeah, I think the way that you've really gone into detail today is really like commendable to you as well, that you're confident to do it, and I hope that everyone is able to take a leaf out of it.
Well, I was going to say the big thing as well is like talking about like I talk about the knife incident, like it's still something that I'm actually really embarrassed about, because it got to that point. But at the end of the day, like I got so lost, and God, I remember seeing mum and dad and trying to explain to them that situation. And again, obviously being a little bit older now, thinking that if that was my child, like how bad would you feel? And again, then I sort of felt, do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? But that was my only sort of it got to the point where it was that bad. It was our only sort of release. And I don't wish anyone to get to that sort of point. I think that's why it's so important. And again, it's not about me. It's not about anything in terms of, oh, look at me, I've done that. It's all about helping each other. It's so important that people hear it and think, oh, do you know what? Actually, I've felt like that before. And do you know what I mean? Actually, I might need some help, or I might need to chat to someone. I might need to chat to Dom. I might need to message him and just say that, do you know what? I have felt the same way. Or if it's not me, it's, do you know what I mean? Someone else. It might be their mum and dad. It might be their best mates, and say, actually, guys, like I'm really struggling and I don't know why. And you will soon find out once you get talking, if it's to the professionals as well, you will find a structure and you'll find why, if that makes sense. Or you might not find well, but you might find how to, I guess, keep control of it, keep on top of it. I think it's so important.
Yeah, it's really difficult to take control of that, because I always say this to everybody that I ever talk to, because I'm very, very similar to you in that regard, in the sense that your own mind is literally your worst enemy. But also your best friend, because depending on what day you wake up, depending on what's going on, your thoughts can swell into some of the most often potent and just irrational thoughts that are not going to be right. But you've got to find your own techniques and ways and be that letting it out emotionally. But the worst thing you can possibly do is hold it in. Just do not hold it in. If you can talk to people, or if you need to cry, you need to talk to anybody. Doing breathing exercises, going out for a run, literally whatever it is, you find your niche, and if that makes you feel better, then do it. But it's so important to understand that.
And I think my biggest thing was understanding my triggers. So like my trigger, like you talk about a trigger, so that trigger of talking and not being able, not having the words come out of my mouth right, was a trigger. Again, that 2019, when I was away from home a lot, there was so many small triggers within that. Not seeing my mates, do you know what I mean? Really having a bad day and having no one around, and you fall into that cycle. Like those were my triggers, and for me, I know that it's never going to go away. I'm always going to have it, and like I said, it's staying on top of that and actually accepting that. Okay, it's never going to go away, but I know how to deal with it. I know how to put things in place and have a bit of perspective as well at times. I think it's so important.
Yeah, you have your own coping mechanisms now, and you know the cause, the triggers. You know when you're experiencing it, and you know what the solutions are, so to speak. Because yeah, exactly, you're never going to be able to hit the delete button on it, are you? So managing
God, if you could
and
do that,
living
it'd
with
be a
it.
great world.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
No, definitely. Well, Dom, this is really interesting. I mean, I had so many questions to talk about, like these experiences, but you've literally explained them all in your kind of monologue of capturing your story,
Yeah,
which is
well,
really important. No, I'm
yeah.
delighted to hear it. But I as we come kind of towards the end of the podcast, you spoke about it briefly earlier in the podcast, and you have this sort of anxiety about what is after cricket. Without looking at after cricket just yet, let's look at this year ahead of you. We've got India lined up, and we've got an enormous summer lined up, and then into the winter as well. We've got some exciting cricket, and you've obviously been rewarded with your England contract. You're now a Yorkshireman. What's the goal in cricket for you? What's your end goal, or where do you foresee yourself?
Yeah, great question. Do you know what? When I was younger, I always was like, right, I want to play 100 Test matches, which obviously, of course, you do. Like, you don't play cricket to do that. Um, after 2019, when I had that sort of big breakdown, and again that, I guess, reevaluation everything. Um, my number one thing is that I always think that I've probably got the way, or how I've got to where I am now, is my resilience and sort of my sticking away, plugging at it. And it's making sure that I always think that when I do retire, I want people to, if my name ever popped up, want people to think, wow, he was a really, really good cricketer, a real good competitor. Obviously, he played X amount of games, however that is for England, Yorkshire, Somerset. But my God, when he was off the pitch, he was such a nice guy, such a good bloke. Do you know what I mean? All these, I want people to sort of, I guess, see myself as a good person. I think that's really important. And you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with cricket? I think the way you can be competitive on a pitch, you can be really, really, really hard to compete against. But I think the number one is being a good person. And I think if you're a good person, I genuinely believe that that will help other people, and actually that will help you as a person, as a cricketer. That will have you more success. And I always sort of sit back, and of course I've got my goals of hopefully, again, playing these 4 Test matches against India. I think that's my number one at the moment, and making sure whatever that is to contribute for an England win, I do that. And then obviously you look at the English summer, that's a different kettle of fish as a spinner, going back to England. And then obviously Ashes. I think as a young, aspiring English cricketer, the one thing you always want to do is play in Ashes at home and play in Ashes away. And I think if I could get on that trip, I think that would, again, be a dream come true. It'd be more of a dream come true. If I get there, I start and we perform as a team, and we go and do what we want to do there as well. I think it's really important. But like I said, when I come back from a cricket and say I'm a little bit older and hopefully have children and things like that, and I'm saying this as a 23-year-old, hopefully I've come back, I think people realise that what my intentions were very good, how I held myself, what my character's like, etc.
Definitely, that sounds great. I really, really well. I wish you all the best for the year, specifically in India. This is my last question, and I ask this to everybody that comes on the podcast. Dom, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong. I think being comfortable, so comfortable within your own headspace. And that might sound, so headstrong, you think obviously being strong, tough. I think actually going back, being strong in terms of actually having the confidence, having the understanding of what goes between the two ears and what's inside the head. I think that's very headstrong. Making sure that you don't get frazzled, you don't get overwhelmed, you don't get, do you know what I mean, panicky. You will get those things, I guess it's having the head, being strong in the head, swip it round, to deal with those things, and being clear, having clarity, being able to do things, I think, the way you want to do it. I think that's how I would, in that sort of bundle of ideas, that's how I would see that.
Fantastic. Well, look, Dom, I've really enjoyed this chat with you. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
We are supporting the Ruth Strauss Foundation with Headstrong and Innings with. Sir Andrew Strauss lost his wife to non-smoking lung cancer in 2018. Just before her death, Ruth and Andrew discussed the idea of setting up a foundation to help other families who would be facing a similar ordeal. The Ruth Strauss Foundation wants to ensure that all families with dependent children facing the death of a parent are offered emotional support and guidance to prepare for the future, allowing them to make the most of their time together. In tandem, they are driving the need for more research and collaboration in the fight against non-smoking lung cancers, which are on the rise and to which Ruth ultimately lost her life. You can support their cause by making a donation today. To donate, text RSF10 to 70191 to donate £10. Or you can donate online at virginmoneygiving.com/fund/headstrong/RSF. Thank you for all your support of Headstrong and the Ruth Strauss Foundation. And that is it for this episode of Headstrong. I just want to say a huge thank you to Dom Bess. I think we can all say that it was an incredibly open conversation, and he goes to show that you cannot judge a book by its cover. Now, join me next week for another episode of Headstrong, which is entirely devoted to cricket this series. I've got some marvellous guests lined up, so I think you'll absolutely enjoy the rest of the series. Thank you so much to you, the listener, for tuning in. And if you would like to donate to the Ruth Strauss Foundation, please look at the bio in the podcast streaming service you're listening to right now. See you next week.